One of the best guitar players ever is Eric Clapton. Famous people from the past few weeks about a terrible health report that changes his life and music. How is he handling this sudden event? Question. And what does it mean for him? Future. Come with us as we look into the sad story behind Eric Clapton's evaluation and what's next. For this well-known artist, a child of lies and lies. Eric Clapton was born in already full of grief and confusion. His life began on March 30, 1945, in the small English town of Ripley-sur-Ury. He was born while the world was still at war. Walter Fryer was a soldier from Canada. During World War II, on duty in England, he got to know Clapton's mom, Patricia Molly. Clapton, who was only 16 years old at the time, was together for a short time before Eric was. Before he was born, Edward went back to Canada while Patricia was still alive. He would never meet his young son Patricia, and not being able to take care of her own child made a tough choice. She gave the baby Eric to her parents, Rose and Jack Clapp. They took him in and raised him as to help things along. They had their own son. Patricia may not have been as painful. Told Eric she was his older sister. Eric's life has been built from the start on a lie, even though they did it because care and safety. As he grew up in his, Eric had no reason to go to his grandparents' house. Doubt the truth, he called them mom and dad. He thought Patricia was just his much bigger sister. Then one day things changed for Eric when he was 9 years old. His ears picked up a family talk that wasn't meant for his ears. That's when he found out the truth. Joan wasn't his sister. She was really his mother and the man he had. I've never met Edward Fryer. Was he real, father? What I learned shocked me, brought Eric a lot of trouble, and this was a lot for a young boy to handle. Carrie, he felt alone and cheated. It was like his whole world was based on. He began to pull away from those who knew the secret. He became quiet and far away from those around him. Mentally closed off in these early years, Eric began to look for something that could help him. He found a way to feel whole again. When it came to music, he found the blues. He first heard the scary sounds of blues from old songs and the radio. Puts on shows with artists like Big Bill. He was talked to by Brunsey and Robert Johnson. These things could not be done by anyone else. They weren't happy songs. Full of sadness, pain feelings that Eric knew all too well. That he liked the blues more than just hearing them. Felt like a reflection of his own heart. Eric became crazy about this music. He did more than just hear it, he lived it. Would listen to music for hours as I try to understand each note, all of the lyrics. The raw feeling in those songs helped him understand his own thought. When he picked up his first, he started teaching guitar when he was 13. Himself how to play by being like the blues greats he looked up to at the time. By the time Eric Clapton was 13, his life had secret has already shaped them, and pain in the heart, but something was about to change. That year, he got something different for a birthday. Everything a guitar. It wasn't fancy, was an acoustic Hoyer made in Germany, something that cost about £2, but to Eric it turned out to be the most important thing in the world. He started to practice every day. He'd spend hours locked in his to copy the sounds he heard in the room. On his favorite blues records, listening to artists such as Robert, he played with B.B. King and Muddy Waters. Took it easy on the songs and studied. He didn't have a teacher, he taught himself one step by ear. One time, by the time he was a teen, the people around him began to take note of his skill level on the guitars were getting better quickly while other kids went outside to play or did. Eric was a normal kid and did his room playing the blues. When they were done the school, he chose to go to Kingston College of Art in 1961. He signed up with the idea of art school at the time to learn painting. Was one of the few places that let them in. Kid artists who didn't fit in. Eric was interested in going to school regularly. Visual art. But what he really loved was still with music. It didn't take long for making him not want to go to art classes. Skipped class and barely. He spent more time instead of taking part listening to music and playing his guitar records. His teachers weren't impressed. After only 1 year, he was kicked out. It was said to be because of a lack of growth and low turnout. This could have been for some, it was a low point. But for Eric it was actually a turning point. Being kicked out, he had to make a big choice, because what was he going to do with his life? After dropping out of art school, he picked music. Clapton began to look for ways to play. Among other people, he began to join nearby bands. One of the first bands, the Roosters, had a flow when they played. And blues band. He played with them from January to August 1963. It wasn't fancy, they did it. Small places and clubs in the area, but for Eric, this was a chance to learn. He learned how to work and play live with other artists and learn how to make changes that he played based on the crowd. After that, he played with Casey Jones and the Engineers for a short time. Again, the gigs were small and the pay was poor, but he wasn't interested in money or fame. He had his whole attention on getting better and building his own style. He learned a lot from his early acts. He learned about how to play in a band, how to lead and when to step back. He also began to understand what made his music unique, and different people started to talk at this point. How Eric Clapton fits into the neighborhood music scene. His mechanical skill was especially good at it. Wasn't often that the artists saw how seriously he took blues. Even when it wasn't a well-known song, he wasn't just having fun when he played, because he felt like it in his heart. He was ready for, by the end of 1963, something bigger. He had shown what he could do. He learned how to play in small teams, in nearby bands. He now wanted to taking their skills to the next level, and that's when the right chance came along, and it would be different. Anything about fame and inner struggle. In the early 1960s, Eric Clapton was better known as word is getting around. The music world knew about it. There was a young someone who could play the blues guitar with a rare mix of skill and feeling. In 1963, his rising fame made him join a band that was becoming well known, the Yardbirds. The Yardbirds were a rough-sounding rhythm and blues band when Clapton joined. Their main goal was blues-based songs that he liked just right. He brought energy and great mechanical skills to the band, and his performances got a lot of attention right away. People were amazed by his music, praised his solos and other bands' genuine love for the blues. But as time went on, the music scene began to record companies wanted hits. The Yardbirds began to move toward a more sound that's good for mainstream pop. This didn't not good for Clapton. He had a lot of faith in the blues. For him, music wasn't just about getting music sold, it was about not moving away from the sound's roots. He loved it when the Yardbirds came out To Love You in 1965, Clapton knew it was time to leave. The song did well, but it wasn't blues. Was pop, and he couldn't stand by it. So even though the band was getting bigger, Clapton's fame made it hard for choice. He left the group and walked from a job that was on the rise because he didn't want to give up his beliefs. That moment showed what kind of artist he was someone who picked duty over fame. Not long after leaving the Yardbirds, Clapton was in a new and exciting project. In 1966, he worked with Jack Bruce on bass and a drummer. Cookie Baker is going to start a new band called Cream. There was nothing else like this group. Something else at the time. It brought three incredibly skilled players in, each with their own style, made a strong trial mix of sounds like blues, rock, and psychedelics. From Cream was a huge hit. Their songs like Sunshine of Your Love, White Room, and Clapton's guitar became hits with Crossroads. He was now at a higher level of play, not only as a great player but as one of the world's best behind the scenes. Jack, things were tense. Bruce and Ginger Baker's relationship was rough. They fought a lot, and their personal differences made it hard to work together. Clapton is stuck in the middle, making things hard. Got tired of fighting all the time. By 1968, only 2 years after it began, Cream, they were very famous but broke up because of the stress and pressure. It impossible to go on once more. Clapton had to look for something more important. In 1969, Clapton he worked with Steve again. Winwood is a singer and piano player, member of the band Traffic. Together they got together and made Blind Faith. Thought of as a supergroup because featured well-known experienced fans of artists had high hopes. Blind Faith put out a self-titled album and went on tour, but despite all, Clapton wasn't happy with all the attention. The thought the band was rushed into the light before they had a chance to grow. The music didn't feel finished, and there wasn't a link between the members strong enough. He was also not happy. What with all the fame and buzz around the group, Blind Faith didn't last in the end. Length of time, they broke up in the same year. This short-lived project showed something more to Clapton. Time and time after time, he got to the top of critical praise for sold-out shows and big sales. It wasn't enough for him, though. Was after something else, not fame, something more inside of him, sincere, and just when things looked like a new Bond was in danger again, would take him in a very different a road of love, deception, and fall. The most painful parts of his life began with three people in a love triangle: a good friend named George Harrison, guitar player for the Beatles, and Patty. Mrs. Boyd, George, Boyd's wife, was very pretty. Model with a lot of energy and charm. Clapton, I met her through Harrison, and over time it was love at first sight for him. With her, but she was already married. To try to get close to one of his best friends, try to fight these feelings, but all they do is got stronger. He kept his feelings in check, hid, but he was having a hard time on the inside. It felt like I had no control over love and loyalty in the end. All of those thoughts, it came out in the form of song. Clapton turned his pain into music. Layla, the song was strong. The most important part of the album, Layla and other different love songs that came out in 1970 with his new band Derek and the Dominoes. Layla was honest and raw. Told the tale of a man who was crazy and in love with a woman he couldn't have. The song was filled with love from the words that are desperate to the wild guitar. Clapton used solos to show how he felt. Everything he had kept inside. The record didn't sell very well, though. At first, it turned into one of the most important rock songs ever. Layla, a classic that was praised for how emotional it was and power, but for Clapton, it wasn't not just a hit song, it was a plea for help. The sign of a man who was sad and getting worse and worse at the same time. Clapton was also going through a scary new part of his life. Life after Cream and Blind Faith wanted to make something more unique. That's how Derek and the Dominoes got together. Together, it wasn't supposed to be a Clapton, a famous band, wanted to keep low-key and put your attention on the sounds. Fame. Bobby Whitlock was in the group. Carl Radle and Jim Gordon. One of the most interesting things about this band were the part that Duane Allman played in the wonderful slide player. From the Allman, Clapton and his brothers liked Allman's play, and they quickly became a deep connection through music. Their guitar work on Isla and a bunch of other love songs were electricity that is full of feeling and soul. Their friendship helped make the record. But this high point didn't stick out. Last long. In 1971, just 1 year after the record came out, Duane Allman died in a motorbike crash. He was only 24 years old. The loss hurt Clapton a lot. It had turned into more than a show partner. He knew someone named Clapton revered a great deal. After Duane's death, Clapton's life began to fall apart. Already going through mental pain from what's going on with Patty Boyd, now it made him feel even more alone. Heroin, and became hooked on it quickly. Clapton's life over the next 3 years fell into a dark time of being alone. Went out of public view. He stopped putting on shows. He barely left the house. Most drug use took up most of his days. In order to block out the pain, friends and fans had no idea what was going on with. Some people thought he had stopped playing music. Others were afraid he might not make it. During this time, Clapton, he stopped, almost like a ghost of himself. Being careful about everything: his job, relationships, and everything else. The man who used to be a lively and the very passionate performance was now quiet and kept secret. It was one of the worst times in his life, and just when it looked like things could not get worse, an unexpected invite would help get things going. His trip back to from alcoholism to drug abuse in Clapton hadn't played since the early 1970s. He hadn't been strong in almost 3 years. Most people are mentally and physically. He wasn't sure if he would ever come back to when Pete wanted to make songs or even stay alive. Townsend, who played guitar for The Who, and one of Clapton's close friends, chose to step in. Townshend thought that Clapton was still able to make music, and that making a comeback could help him get better, so he planned a special event for on January 13th. There was a Rainbow concert. 1973 at London's Rainbow Theatre. The only thing that mattered was getting Clapton on stage. Even if it's only for one night. The show put together a group of skilled performers, including Townsend, people like Steve Winwood, Ron Wood, and others. The attention was clearly on Clapton. He was scared, confused, and still having a hard time getting off of drugs. He was far from the strong musician that fans used to know, but something happened when he walked on stage. Clapton changed how he played, and even though he was still weak, his hands were shaky, but his guitar could still sing. The crowd greeted him with love and excitement. It was a tough act, but it made them think of something inside him. For the first time in years he had a reason to keep going. There was more to Rainbow Concert than just it brought Clapton back to the stage. Hope that music and life were still.